In the opening scene, we are introduced to two brothers, Joe, who is retired from the army, and Danny, who is still serving. They are currently on a hunting trip in the desert. Amidst their activity, the two talk about their third brother, Roy. Danny wishes that he joins them as well, but Joe thinks otherwise. He believes that Roy is a troublemaker, as he often goes to jail. It is revealed that Roy traded his career in the military for MMA, but he got injured in a match and now he drives a truck. The scene then cuts to Roy, who arrives at a fight location. It turns out that he can't let go of his MMA dreams, so he still fights in underground tournaments. At present, Roy is already late for the fight, but despite this, he takes a moment to engage intimately with his girlfriend Lisa, showcasing his carefree and easygoing nature in contrast to his brothers. A short while later, the fight commences, and being a former MMA fighter, Roy dominates his opponent, knocking him out. He then arrogantly returns to Lisa for a celebratory kiss. Unfortunately, this distraction allows the opponent to recover and land forceful blows on Roy, turning those tables around. The defeat causes a huge loss of a client named Julian, for whom Roy fights. Here, it is revealed that Roy has been fighting for him for 4 years and has earned lots of money for him. However, Julian, who is also a ruthless mafia leader, claims that his recent performances have declined significantly. He assumes that his focus is diverted because of his girlfriend, and as a result, Julian executes Lisa right in front of him.
Whoa!
Later that night, Julian takes Roy to one of his warehouses, where he stores tons of rare diamonds after retrieving them from mining lands. Julian assigns Roy with a job to transport those diamonds securely from Vegas to Baja, offering a substantial sum of $1 million as payment if he succeeds. Roy is taken aback by the offer, and wonders why Julian chose him over his armed goons. In response, Julian provides him with 3 reasons. Firstly, he is a professional seasoned truck driver with a great driving record. Secondly, Roy has 2 brothers in the military, which can be a plus point for him. And thirdly, he owes him. Furthermore, Julian threatens that if Roy refuses, he'll kill his brother, as well as Joe's wife and daughters. With no other choice, Roy hesitantly dials Joe's number, but the latter, who is still upset with him, doesn't even pick it up. The following day, Danny takes a break from his work and visits Joe's residence. Upon arrival, he finds his brother engaged in farm work, tending to livestock. When Danny brings up the topic of Roy, Joe tells him that he called him the previous night, but he didn't pick it up. Danny asks for the reason, to which Joe expresses his frustration towards him. Joe cites a pattern where Roy only gets in touch when he needs something from them, assuming the same motive this time.
Joke's on you, bro. I don't need anything. Your wife's just gonna die because I screwed up.
Their conversation is abruptly disrupted by Roy's arrival. However, instead of offering a warm welcome, Joe treats him harshly, causing Roy to regret his visit. As he is about to leave, Danny intervenes to console Roy. The 2 brothers then talk in private, and Roy extends an invitation for a long ride to Baja. Danny agrees, considering that they can spend some time together after a long gap. In the next scene, the journey begins with the 2 brothers hitting the road. After a long and tiring drive, Roy pulls over to an underground fighting arena that is operated by his friend. There, they watch a fierce fight between 2 fighters named Big Duke and Barney Boy. Owing to his formidable strength, Big Duke swiftly gains victory over Barney, who's just a bitch-ass dinosaur. Following this, the event host asks if there is anyone in the audience who has the guts to challenge Big Duke, and Roy steps forward, disregarding his brother's advice. The fight ensues, and Roy eventually defeats the opponent using a chokehold technique. The next morning, the brothers continue their trip aboard the truck. Several hours later, they reach the diamond warehouse, where they are scheduled to retrieve the diamond-filled container. At the location, they meet Julian's trusted associate named Paulie, who shows the crates to them. He further explains that the diamonds are cleverly hidden inside the drink bottles, so that the cops won't find them easily. After this, they load the container worth $50 million on the truck and depart for Baja. As they drive, Roy notices the low fuel signal on the truck, and so he pulls over at a nearby gas station. Amid the refueling process, they also enter the adjacent convenience store to buy some food and drinks. A few minutes later, a group of masked, armed gangsters show up outside the store and start robbing Roy's truck. One of the gang members manipulates the truck's wiring to start the engine without keys, while the others buy him time by unleashing gunfire, tragically killing the store owner in the process. The robbers then make off with the stolen truck. In an attempt to thwart the thieves, Roy fires shots at them, but his efforts prove fruitless. Danny is unable to understand what just happened and who they were. However, Roy doesn't have time to explain, so he asks his brother to get into the store owner's car before going for the chase. They soon catch up to the robbers, but when the bad guys open fire, the brothers are forced to stop the pursuit. At this point, an enraged Danny presses for an explanation on what's going on. He also wants to know what's inside the container. Left with no options, Roy finally discloses that the truck contains rare and uncut diamonds worth $50 million that belong to a merciless mafia kingpin.
Is that all, Roy?
Not long after, the news of the failed delivery reaches Julian, enraging him. He begins to suspect that Roy has deceived him and fled with the diamonds. Later that evening, the police officers, led by Detective David Johnson, arrive at the crime scene and begin their investigation. They find Roy's truck abandoned in the middle of the road, but get no valuable leads. The following morning, the masked gangsters return back to the same diamond warehouse. Turns out that they are none other than Paulie's men, and he deliberately dispatched them for the diamond heist. It was his clever move to steal the diamonds from Julian by framing Roy and his brother for the same. Elsewhere, Roy and Danny are now left out in the desert. They're forced to head back to the town on foot because the car they stole got damaged due to the numerous gunshots. As they walk, Danny claims that their big brother was right about Roy, as his life is full of troubles. He regrets accompanying him to this journey and vows not to join him on any other trip in the future. In the next scene, we see Joe, who arrives back home from the grocery store, only to discover that his house is in the state of complete disarray. He rushes inside, frantically searching for his wife and daughters, but they are nowhere to be found. It appears that Julian has abducted them as a consequence of Roy's actions. After a considerable walk, Roy and Danny eventually reach a location where they acquire a phone signal. Danny observes several missed calls from his brother and returns the call. As soon as Joe picks up, he informs about the kidnapping. He appears to be completely unaware about what is going on. In response, Roy speaks up, saying he knows who has done this. Joe becomes enraged hearing his voice and even threatens to kill Roy if anything happens to his family. Following this, Roy contacts Julian and puts it on speaker before talking to him. He tells him about the robbing incident and assures him that he will bring the diamonds back. Julian provides him with 48 hours of time to find the diamonds, or else he will kill Joe's wife and daughters. Hearing this, Danny and Joe are very disappointed that he risked the family's life for the sake of his illegal business. However, they have no time to fight each other because something bigger is at stake right now. Hence, the three brothers decide to work together and go for their family's rescue. As Danny and Roy wait for Joe to arrive at their location, the duo are spotted by Detective Johnson and his colleague from a vantage point atop a hill. Despite this, they choose not to apprehend the brothers due to a lack of concrete evidence. Instead, the detectives decide to monitor their activities closely. Meanwhile, Joe goes to a secret underground bunker where he has stored a lot of weapons. He gathers some rifles and ammunition before heading towards his brother's location. After a few hours on the road, he comes across his brothers, and the first thing he does after stepping out of the Jeep is punch Roy in the face. Following this, the trio heads towards Julian's mansion, but unbeknownst to them, they are tailed by two detectives. They arrive at the mansion in the morning, and Joe, being a former soldier, leads his brothers inside. They use their military tactics to take out all the guards outside the mansion, one after another. Joe and Roy then enter the mansion while Danny takes a sniper position to cover his brothers from outside. In the midst of this, Paulie also arrives and walks straight inside Julian's room, where the mafia leader's enjoying some private time with two girls. Julian angrily chastises Paulie for disrupting his personal time, but the latter seems to be there for some other reason. With a sinister smile, he shoots the two girls before admitting that he was the one who robbed the diamonds. Paulie further asserts that the diamond business is actually owned by his family, and Julian is just an adopted son of his uncle. Thus, Paulie is now here to take over the business from him. Their conversation is soon interrupted when they hear gunshots outside. Taking advantage of this distraction, Julian knocks Paulie out. Seconds later, Joe and Roy storm into the room and hold Julian at gunpoint. However, the brothers can't kill him right away because they still don't know about their family's whereabouts. This gives Julian enough time to knock Joe out. He then proceeds to confront Roy when suddenly, Paulie gets up, grabs a pistol, and shoots both Joe and Julian. He then orders his men to load Roy to the vehicle in order to take him to his base. Julian dies on the spot, but Joe manages to survive because of his plot armor. Shortly after, Danny, having lost contact with his brothers, rushes into the mansion, but Roy is already abducted by then. Together, the two brothers track down Roy's phone location and head for the rescue. En route, Danny contacts his batchmate, Jimmy, asking him to accompany them with the necessary weapons. At the base, Roy is surrounded by Paulie's armed guards, who are also holding Joe's wife and daughters captive. Paulie devises a brutal test. Roy must fight one of his strongest guards, with the promise of releasing Roy's family if he wins. Accepting the challenge, Roy steps into the arena to fight Paulie's formidable enforcer. However, he is already tired from going through a lot, and as a result, he struggles to match up with his opponent's strength. On the other hand, Joe, Danny, and Jimmy reach the confines of Paulie's base. Jimmy positions himself at a distance and takes out the guards one by one. Meanwhile, Joe and Danny progress forward, shooting guards on their way. In a parallel scene, Roy gathers all of his remaining strength and ultimately kills his opponent using an MMA move. At this point, Paulie also hears his guards being shot, so he decides to make an escape. However, his efforts are futile as the brothers eventually corner him. Joe is on the verge of shooting him dead, but the detectives, along with the police force, arrive just in time and stop Joe from committing an unlawful act. Never mind the other 30 guys they killed. The commotion ends as Joe's wife and daughters are released from captivity. Afterwards, Detective Johnson extends his gratitude to the three brothers for helping him in apprehending the mafia members, whom the FBI have been pursuing for years. They don't even care that the brothers just killed 30 people. In the final scene, the three brothers reunite, reconciling their differences and bridging the gaps between their relationship. Roy finally gives up underground fighting and instead starts helping Joe in his farm. If he gets that old itch, he could always just fight a cow. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.